going to go through and just give you guys a background of SkyTerra Technologies, who we are, where we came from, and how we got here. SkyTerra is a Microsoft solution, cloud solution provider and have been doing Teams VoIP for approximately 7 years, when it was still Skype VoIP. Transition over to Teams VoIP, and during the COVID period, saw a very huge increase in Team VoIP adoption due to the circumstances. SkyTerra became known as one of the top Teams VoIP implementers in North America, where we actually got called up by Microsoft, and they shared with us that we were one of the fastest growing Teams VoIP partners in the country, and asked us what brought us our success. And we shared with them, we just called up our customers and shared with them how Teams VoIP was working and how it would help them out during the COVID period. And next thing you know, Darren Rathbone, who's one of my senior engineers, and I found that we were doing about 2 of these a week for a period. And continue to have massive success across our 200 plus customers, with the vast majority of them moving over to Teams VoIP in the past couple of years. That said, I'm going to just pass it over to Darren Rathbone to give a little background on himself, and go from there.
Hey, good afternoon. So Darren Rathbone, as Dan said, senior engineer for SkyTerra. I've been with the company for, I think I'm going on 5 years now. And ever since I started, it has been a very busy time here with SkyTerra doing Teams VoIP implementations. We've done anything from small 5-person Teams VoIP implementations to hundreds of users. And for the most part, they're all very similar. It's just length of time because of the amount of users that we may need to provide Teams voice services for. So I think from here I can go into a demo and show some of the things in the Teams portal once you have the proper licensing. Is that okay with you, Dan?
Yeah, and actually you had said a couple hundred, but we've actually have several customers that are, thousands of users who have migrated, as well as multinationals who may be in upwards of 7-8 different countries. So it's a very scalable solution for, as you noted, from very small to in the thousands without much of an issue.
Yeah, thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, so here we have your Teams Admin Center, and once you have the proper licensing under the Teams or the voice menu, some of these feature sets will become available once that licensing has been applied. But this is primarily where you access all of your voice configuration, policies, auto attendance and call queue configuration, etc. So the first thing is we have your phone numbers. In this page, you can see all of the phone numbers that you've either obtained from Microsoft or ported over from your existing carrier. It will show any numbers that are unassigned or assigned to users or resource accounts. Resource accounts are what you leverage for assigning to the auto attendance and call queues. Teams, you also have the ability to leverage Operator Connect. So Operator Connect is it's not a very expansive service yet, but Microsoft is working on expanding this offering with carriers out there. And essentially what Operator Connect is, these carriers can provide you with that sort of direct routing functionality. If you don't want to bring over any numbers, you can obtain numbers from a predefined operator in your vicinity, and they can integrate with your Teams Admin Center. Teams Voice also offers the ability to bring your own carrier. If you have a contract with your carrier that maybe you have a few more years left on the contract before it expires, no worries. You can integrate those carriers into your Teams portal. So keeping your numbers and paying for your phone service through your carrier, but leveraging the ability and the features and functionalities that Teams offers to your end users, whether they're using the client on their desktop or their mobile devices.
And Darren, this also includes direct routing to other phone systems as well as third-party solutions like Five9, which we work with on doing call centers. The direct routing is a process of similar to the legacy voice solutions where you could do direct routing to different PBXs. We can do the same thing with direct routing.
Yes, in addition to that, you can configure session border controllers. So if you have a on-premise need for paging systems out to your manufacturing floor, you can leverage a session border controller, which leverages direct routing to route the call from your Teams user to that SBC, and then from that SBC out to the public announcement device. We also have access to various policies in Teams. So calling policies, you can control, if you want to provide or turn off cloud recording for all of your users or some of your users, enabling transcription in your meetings, allowing or disallowing call forwarding and enabling voicemail, etc. So a lot of options here in amongst these policies. We have call hold policies to apply music or music of your own. Call park. Call park is the ability to place a caller on hold, and then, for example, if you're in a manufacturing facility, you can announce, that caller on hold on that specific parked line, and a user can pick up that caller from any Teams-enabled device or phone, and just by simply entering the hold number on that, and it connects that user with that caller. You have caller ID policies. So within the continental United States, there is a national database that can manage your caller ID, company name, etc. And Teams Voice can support that. Dial plans. Dial plans is a way to, for example, the session border controller, let's say if you want to page out to a specific number, you can use dial plans and what they call normalization rules. So if a user dials maybe a 3-digit code, you can specify that 3-digit code or number to route specifically to that session border controller. For example, I want to send all my pages to the extension 9999. I can use a dial plan and a normalization rule to forward that call through the SBC, whereas regular calls to each individual user's telephone numbers will work as normal. There's emergency policies. Teams does support dynamic E911. Mobility policies. Because of this day and age, Teams Voice is a product that doesn't cement you down to one location. You can use the client on your mobile device anywhere that you've got a Wi-Fi signal, or even just a carrier service signal, and the mobility policies will allow you to do specific settings for the mobile devices. Voicemail, it's with Teams, you have cloud voicemail offerings. Again, you can disable or enable it for certain users. You can configure settings on default number of seconds that the call will ring before it gets answered or sent to voicemail. You can upload your own greetings. If you wanted to set up a standard greeting for all of your employees, you can do that here, or the user can do this individually in their own Teams client. Teams also offers the use of auto attendants and call queues. This is really where a lot of your controlling of your call flow is configured. So in an auto attendant, this is where you would assign your main number or numbers if you've got multiple office locations, or if you want to leverage multiple languages, you can leverage an auto attendant for such thing. So if we come into this auto attendant, what you see is the number or numbers. You can have multiple numbers assigned to a single auto attendant, but you'll see that shown here. If you have an operator that you would like to maybe answer all of the inbound calls during business hours, you can select a specific person or even a call queue to be your operator, and then configure that in your call flow, which we'll see here in the next few pages. You've got your time zone setting, and then again, your language setting. So as Dan had mentioned, multilingual functionality, you can set your language here, and then in your calling settings, you can upload a recorded greeting in that specific language, or you can enter the text in the text boxes that are provided, and the system will read that text, so it converts it text to speech.
And this is very, Darren, this is very custom where, you know, even for ourselves, where we have an office in Vancouver, where people come into Vancouver, and you can reference one queue to another queue, fairly simple through specific routing rules in here.
Correct.
I think you're going to demonstrate it, but we've had some very complex ones where we have, like, the English is referencing to a French, and a French to English, and we've had Spanish and several other languages where we've worked with customers to allow this to be truly a global solution.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. So here in your main call flow, this would be considered your call flow during your business hours if you have the need to separate your call flow between business hours and off hours. So you can configure a greeting either by uploading your own pre-recorded audio file. And again, this can be in your language of choice. Or you can use the greeting text box here and enter your greeting text, and the system will read that out to the caller when the phone is picked up. Then you have call routing options. And in this case, we are leveraging the selection for menu options. And so again, you can have additional text to add to that greeting message, which gets into your menu options that the caller is hearing, or you can do it in audio file. So in this case, we have the text that pretty much directs the caller to the menu options that we have available. So 1 for sales, 2 for support, 3 for accounting, 4 for human resources. And then in this particular case, each one of those menu options routes out to a call queue. And inside of those call queues are multiple agents that can answer that call. You also have the ability to route any of these menus to potentially an external telephone number if you need to. Or you can have multiple layers of an auto attendant and expand. So you could send one of these menu options to another auto attendant. And in that case, maybe if you do have a bilingual or multilingual company, your initial call might come in English and then offer the text to say, essentially for French, press 1, and you can leverage that menu option to go out to an auto attendant that is in French. Dialing by name, you can offer dialing by name for the users or the callers to, if they want to search your directory by users' names, you can offer that up. Oops. Okay, I just want to discard the change there. Go back in. So after you have your main call flow for business hours configured, it drops you into your after hours call flow. And here, if you have a need, again, for a different call flow for after hours, you can set your hours, your business hour windows here, and then come down to the call flow configuration for your after hours. And in this particular case, it's just offering a greeting to the caller and then sending the caller out to, this is our after hours support team. So this is a call queue with multiple agents that will answer that call. Okay, I'm in read-only mode here, so just you also have the flexibility of configuring holidays. If you want to provide different call flows or greetings for holidays, you can do that as well. And you'll see here it's pretty similar to the configuration of a call flow, the greeting, the call routing options. You can offer menus as well. So you can get very granular. And then your dial scope. This allows you to include or exclude users in your organization from the dial by name functionality. For example, if you do not want your executive level team to be available via the dial by name, you can actually create a group, add those users to the group, and exclude them here. And then lastly, this is the resource account. So in order to create that link between your account that has the license required for an auto attendant and your telephone number, you create the account, you license it, assign the number, and then the resource account gets assigned to the auto attendant. And then once that is complete, the auto attendant is fully functional. Now, if we come over to call queues, I'll just dive into one of these really quickly. So call queues, or also known as hunt groups. In Teams, you can assign a number to a call queue so that it can be called directly. For example, maybe your help desk has a different telephone number, you can assign that to the call queue and send that caller off directly to the help desk agents. Or as you saw, you can send a call through your auto attendant to a call queue using the menu options. So in here we have our resource account that's assigned. You have this caller ID. So one great thing about Teams is if an agent is part of a call queue and you want to allow them to make calls outbound on behalf of the call queue, you can do that so that the recipient receives the caller ID of that service number, not the user's actual personally assigned telephone number. We've got language options here. And then coming into the greeting and music, again, if you have this receiving phone calls directly, you can play audio files or add greeting text for that. When an agent picks up and either puts you on hold, there's default music, or you can upload your own audio file for your own hold music. And then here under call answering, this is where you add your agents that will answer the calls for that call queue. You can have multiple agents listed up here, and then you've got your routing methods for those agents. So attendant routing will ring everybody in this call queue simultaneously. You can configure serial routing, so it will ring essentially in the order of the agents listed. We'll ring each one individually, going from top to bottom. Round robin is just a random selection of the agents within the call queue. You have longest idle, so anybody who is been idle and available the longest will target that user first. And then you can leverage presence-based routing as well. So obviously if their presence in Teams is busy, it would not ring that agent if you're leveraging the longest idle option with the routing method. Also, as part of a call queue, agents can be provided the option to opt in or out. And again, going back to my help desk scenario, an agent might leave for their lunch break. And in that particular case, they can, from their Teams client, opt out of that call queue so that they're not bothered on their lunch break. And then when they return, they can opt back in and start receiving phone calls again. You've got agent alert time control here. So minimally, it will ring the agents for 15 seconds before either it goes off to voicemail, or if you're using serial routing, before it would go off to the next agent to ring. And then lastly, in your exception handling, we've got various options here to control call overflow. So if that call queue is really busy with a lot of calls, you can set a maximum here. And if that maximum number of calls is reached and in queue, anything above and beyond that can get sent to a different person, such as maybe a manager, or it can go straight to voicemail. So some options there. And then you have timeout configuration. So in any case, if none of the agents answer the call, you have this call timeout where, again, you can route it to another person in the organization. You could route it back to potentially an auto attendant, to the main menu, or even to a voicemail box. And then you have agents opt-in or signed-in offerings. So you can enable that or disable that for your agents if you do not want to allow them to opt in or out. On the left here, holidays, as I had gone over quickly, this is where you can configure all of your holidays, setting up the audio, the greeting text, or uploading the audio files, configuring your dates for each of those holidays. And then lastly, this is your list of resource accounts that are used for license assignment, service main number assignments, and then these are what gets assigned to the particular auto attendant or call queue. And then a couple of other things to go over separately here under meetings. Teams Voice does offer audio conferencing. So when you configure Teams Voice, Microsoft will automatically assign a default dial-in number for your users' meetings that Teams meetings that they set up. You can either stick with that predefined default number that's assigned to your tenant, or you can leverage, if you brought over your own telephone numbers, you can assign or reassign your conference bridge number to be one of your numbers you brought over. And additionally, you can include a toll number, or if you want to also provide toll-free numbers, that can be configured to appear in the meeting settings when a user creates a meeting. For your audio conferencing, there is a policy which provides not too much configuration here, but here you can see if you want to include a toll-free number in the meeting details, you can enable that. And then you've got meeting policies. So you've got control over things such as allowing meeting chat in a Teams meeting, or maybe not allowing that. Depends on the type of meeting that you have or want to hold, and sometimes the meeting chat can be disruptive. So you've got that flexibility. Allowing or not allowing anonymous users to join a meeting, or maybe bypassing the lobby, etc. So lots of flexibility here with Teams and the meetings that you might want to hold in your company. Yeah, I think that's quickly just a quick overview of what I wanted to cover today.
So I know Deborah has obtained some common questions from people during these projects. Deborah, do you want to, go through and ask Darren and myself some of the questions that you've obtained over the period?
I would love to. Thank you, Darren, for that presentation. I appreciated that.
You're welcome.
So what we did is we gathered like the top 4 questions that we typically get from our customers when they're looking at evaluating a Teams VoIP project. And so the first one would be, what is a typical outage window for a Teams VoIP project?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you're a customer that wants to port your telephone numbers over to Teams, the porting process is essentially submitting the port request to which will become your new carrier, Microsoft. And then from there, Microsoft handles the port request with your existing carrier. Now, when that port request is actually processed, the typical interruption to inbound calls is usually 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the provisioning in the back end of those numbers in your tenant. We've seen it be much less on most occasions. And then also good thing to note is your outbound calls, if you're in an outbound call, those would not be disrupted or disconnected during that port process.
Very cool. Thank you for that. So the second question that I have is, how do you test all of the things prior to that cutover? How do you know it's going to be a seamless cutover?
Yes. The great thing that Microsoft offers, so let's say you have 50 telephone numbers you want to port over, and you've got 50 users that you need to license for Teams Voice. You would need to purchase 50 licenses, Teams Phone with Calling plan. That number of licenses gives you a percentage of the amount of numbers you can actually obtain for free from Microsoft. So in this case, maybe we would go and ask for 5 telephone numbers from Microsoft and use those to assign to the auto attendants and the call queues and maybe some of the users, in which case we can test with those temporary numbers so that the call flow is working as expected. It sounds and functions according to what the customer was expecting to meet their needs.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Sure.
So the third question I have is, how does Teams Voice handle 800 numbers?
Yes, you can, again, bring your own 800 number from your carrier. You can obtain toll-free numbers from Microsoft, but then in order for you to be billed for those inbound calls, you leverage what's called communication credits. Those get assigned to your tenant, and essentially they're added using a credit card. And you can, pre-purchase a pool of minutes, maybe 50 minutes or something, or $20 worth, etc. And once the minutes are getting close to being consumed, you can essentially configure it when you make the purchase for it to auto recharge, so that you don't have any disruption to those toll-free inbound calls. But again, essentially, it's just going to charge your credit card.
That's fantastic.
Or they've now tied it into Azure, and it'll be part of your Azure consumption.
Oh,
true,
nice.
correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's their vehicle of being able to do it, but they can't. Although Teams is a native 365 technology, their vehicle of being able to charge for those by the minute is only able to be done through Azure.
Got it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about analog lines. There's a lot of people that call in and they have analog lines, but they want to move it over to Teams. But I mean, and obviously we have the process to do that for migration, but what about those tricky landlines, like the faxes and the elevators and the security systems?
Yeah, so Teams currently does not provide any faxing capabilities. So most of the time, we will recommend the customer to open up an account with eFax if they need to, maintain faxing capabilities, and we can assist them with that porting process. eFax has their own porting letter of authorization form that needs to be filled out, but we can assist them with that and get those numbers ported over to, cloud faxing, and that way they can get rid of those landlines.
That's great. I have a couple of other questions.
So in regards to the security systems in the elevators, we'll either have them go direct with plain old POTS line with the traditional carrier, whether it's Verizon or in Canada, TELUS, Rogers, etc. Or they could leverage the SBC like the paging systems do. The SBCs often have analog ports, or a lot of these guys will modernize those solutions too. Security systems will use cell phones for security purposes. The analog way was kind of a legacy way to do it anyway. And then there's also they're moving over to direct data integration rather than using a traditional phone line anyway. So you'll find that sometimes people are doing it the way that they used to do it just because it's the only way they knew. And when they poke into it, they find out there's much better modern ways because quite honestly, we've all watched movies. Snipping an analog phone line to break into a place is kind of old school, right? So there's better ways to do that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about migration strategy. So how does SkyTerra Technologies approach a migration plan?
Yeah, we typically will do it in a three phased approach. The first phase is sort of that discovery process with the customer, getting an understanding of their auto attendant needs, the telephone numbers that they have that to port over, and really it's getting that initial port request submitted into Microsoft because that's one of the main drivers for the go live date. We can't really determine the go live date until the carriers have agreed upon the date that we've requested. So
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, getting those port requests submitted and processed, right? Getting that going. Once we have that done, we then move on to getting into the details with the customer and setting up their call flows with the auto attendants, call queues, obtaining the appropriate licensing for all of that. The users in calling plans, do they need to make any international calling, or a subset of the users need to do international calling? And obviously testing, right? And getting some of those temporary numbers to test those call flows. And it could be an iterative process. We may not get it completely right the first time, but that's the beauty of this. It's configurable and adjustable, so we can make changes, or maybe the client decides they don't like the way the call flow sounds because they've not listened to it in many years. It's just been configured and not touched in a while, right? So after spending some time, they may change their mind and want to switch it up. And then lastly, the third phase is the getting ready for the go live. We get users trained on the Teams client, how to make phone calls, receive calls, transferring, or if they decide to purchase physical Teams compatible phones for their desks. We go through a training process to show them how to use those phones because they are very different from what the old legacy phones are. And then it's go live, which is usually very anticlimactic. It's 99% of the time, it's just waiting for Microsoft to complete the port, and we just kind of sit back and make sure the customer is functioning as necessary. The calls are working in and out, and doing any post cutover support as needed that comes up.
I love that. It sounds really simple. Dan, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds simple, but there's some tips and tricks that we will go along the way that we know, like during certain times, it's better to cut over than others because of the teams that you have back on the Microsoft side and from the carriers. We've got experience with Darren, probably 30 plus carriers at this point. We've done so many migrations. Some of them have some tendencies that we watch out for, whereas others are, as Darren noted, they're used to doing these. So it's a quick process. But based off of our experience, Darren's right. We've made this a lot simpler than you would expect. But it does take several hundred migrations under your belt to make it as easy as it sounds.
And we do have one carrier we'd like to stay away from, but
Yeah, we won't bring their name up because that's the we got to be kind. But yes, there's one carrier in particular which we didn't understand why it took them 3 months to understand what they needed to do, but it is what it is.
So you guys got ahead of me a little bit. I was going to ask, what are the potential disruptions during the migration process? And you had obviously have spoken about the carriers coordinating the port date, right? Are there any other potential disruptions that somebody should prepare for or that SkyTerra prepares for to avoid it?
It's all in the details at the front. We've had customers give us their phone numbers that they need to port, and in their due diligence, maybe they forgot one or two or something. So it didn't make the port request. In that particular case, we are able to zig and zag and come up with a solution to at least get the calls working to those numbers by leveraging call forwarding. We've had to do that where calls come into the existing carrier and the client can enable call forwarding to a temporary Teams number that gets assigned to the user. That way the user can go off and work through Teams like everybody else in the organization and not really feel the effects of their number not truly being assigned to them. So we've been able to do that. And then you just have to submit another port request to get those stragglers moved over.
Well, and I think that's natural, right?
Yep.
So Darren, what you're speaking to is SkyTerra's best practices, which is the discovery process, where we submit standardized questionnaires and make sure that we fully vetted the situation for our clientele, so that way we can feel confident with all of our experience that we're covering all the bases that at least we're aware of, but then we still have workarounds for the things that might, come by just because, honest error, right?
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Perfect. It's the benefit of having done this so many times, right? So as a non-technical person, I hear phrases like connect, operator connect, or direct routing. So what are the pros and cons of those two? Well, let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase that for a second.
Okay.
So I think it's a little deeper than that. So when people are talking about their VoIP solution, they're wondering, do we use Microsoft as our PSTN carrier or connect with our own carrier via Operator Connect or direct routing? How do we decide how to do that? Is there any particular advice that you can give people as they're trying to think that through and figure out what the best bet for them is?
I think one of the drivers might be if they are just stuck in a contract for multi-years.
Got it.
And they just can't get out of it, but want to leverage the experience of Teams. Maybe they're using Teams for chatting, et cetera, and want to integrate the calling into one application. And so they can do that just by going to direct routing.
Yeah, it's really about keeping it simple, stupid, the whole KISS concept, right?
Exactly.
Darren and I came from a world of being exchange administrators. They don't exist any longer, right? In the new world, there's no longer telephony folks at these organizations either, right? So what we've done is we work with the customer to figure out how do we keep it simple, stupid. And what that allows them to do is concentrate on other parts of the business. And although you didn't ask, sometimes that's a hard thing for them to swallow, right? Because when we're working with them, they're used to having to do a lot more work than they used to. And now that we've simplified it, they're like, what do we do on onboarding and offboarding? And it's really a simple task. The most difficult part of onboarding and onboarding new people is sometimes the patience of letting the Microsoft synchronizing occur on the backside. People they want that instant gratification. And it may take 15 minutes for a license or a phone number to be associated to an individual. And that I think that's difficult post migration sometimes.
Yep.
Did you have something to add, Darren? I'm sorry.
No, that's a good point. Yep.
Okay.
Dealing with the cloud.
You guys had already spoken a little bit about how Teams Voice is very flexible and how it can deal with all sorts of different sizes of organizations, because SkyTerra has done migrations for people with hundreds of users all the way up to thousands of users, even multinational organizations that we've helped them with this type of migration. And so do you have any additional thoughts about how to maybe from a competitive standpoint and other competitive technologies, how Teams Voice really is a strong, scalable solution for them as they're considering other things in the marketplace?
But I think Darren said it best earlier. It's you're using chat, you're using Teams, you're using Teams rooms. So we haven't even broached the aspect of the conference rooms, and this isn't like, even 6, 7, 8 years ago when you wanted to put in a Cisco room system and the room system was $25,000 by itself. We're outfitting whole companies with 6 or 7 conference rooms for less than $20,000. So the reality is, it's, again, keeping everything simple, stupid. If you're using chat, if you're using your conference rooms, if you're using, we're doing it with a webinar right now, right? We're not dealing with 5 or 6 different products.
Right.
2019, 2020 prior, you had competitors out there where you had a bunch of different products to do what you needed to do. And now looking forward, you're integrating Teams with the future as well, where you're going to be prompted for transcriptions and Copilot integration and meeting summaries that may come up as part of the meeting. It's an amazing feat, I should say, that you have a 50-minute meeting, and on the right hand side, all of a sudden Copilot has summarized all the takeaways for people. Microsoft has really made a simplified ecosystem to do things. And yes, there are other products out there that have their little one-off things, but they don't have everything, right? And yes, Microsoft's not perfect at everything, but they're pretty darn good at it all at this time. So it's whether you're a small organization who doesn't want to buy 5 or 6 products to get the best of breed of everything, and you want something that's 95, 98% there, Teams is the way to go. If you're a 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 person company, you used to have 2 or 3 people in your telephony team, and another couple people for your conference rooms, and then you had IT sprawl with your marketing people doing their own webinar software. Now it's all done through O365 and Teams. Your people, I think it's underappreciated how many different products and people that used to take to do a lot of the things just 4 or 5 years ago. And working with an organization like ourselves will help you streamline and reduce that footprint for you so that you guys can work on bigger things.
Dan, I think you really explained the value of that. Go ahead, Darren.
Yeah, and just to add, Microsoft is really thinking about the mobile workforce. They have this new offering called Teams Phone Mobile. And so right now they have partnered with Verizon, and I believe they are working on getting this with other carriers. So with Teams Phone Mobile, if you're providing your employees with a mobile device on a Verizon business account, you can get those mobile numbers moved into your Teams portal, and you can add those numbers to your call flows, et cetera, like any Teams number that the user has. And on the end user device side, that salesperson or that person that travels a lot doesn't have two numbers, their
Mhm.
Teams number and their mobile number. It's their mobile number is their Teams number as well. And so the licensing integrates those calls into the native dialer of your mobile device, iPhone or Android, and then simply by if you're in a call, let's say somebody calls your mobile number and you answer it with the native dialer, you just can transfer that call into your Teams app by launching the Teams app on the phone, and it's seamlessly transferred into the Teams app so that you can view a PowerPoint that maybe the Teams caller is trying to share with you, et cetera.
Mhm.
So there's really some great features with that and mobile users.
It's really getting next level. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So let's try to recap about what we've done today. First of all, we introduced SkyTerra Technologies as a Microsoft partner that you would want to prefer to work with in your Teams VoIP actions. And Dan spoke a little bit about our experience and why we've done this hundreds of times with both small and larger organizations. And then Darren was kind enough to go through the Teams Voice features and all of its functionalities and touching on all of the different things from the administrative window, which was super helpful for people that have navigated that, but maybe didn't understand all of the levers and what all of those things meant. So that was super helpful. And then, of course, Darren and Dan then addressed all of the top questions that we get from our customers and our prospects regarding evaluating Teams VoIP as a solution for their organizations. And what I'd like to do is just wrap up with, you can go to any Microsoft partner or not any Microsoft partner, but most Microsoft partners that can help you with the Teams VoIP migration. So why SkyTerra? Why would somebody want to choose SkyTerra to help them with their Teams VoIP migration over others?
So I think the big differentiator is that we do look at it as an opportunity to simplify a customer's organization, right? So we don't try to oversell, overcomplicate. It's although there are some complications sometimes with these, we will try our best to make it a simpler solution for you. And I think, and we're very straightforward on how we go about this. And I think there's a lot of value to that, right? And now we can go concentrate on other projects and other initiatives for your organization. It's a very, very straightforward two-way street working with these companies, and it's not generally a one and done project, because what ends up happening is they see the success of what we're doing here, and then we may be working on a security project down the road, or data governance, or SharePoint, you name it. We do a tremendous amount of the Microsoft ecosystem, but we basically will call it how it is. Occasionally, the one thing we didn't really talk about too much was, sometimes a Teams VoIP project may not fit an organization, and we'll tell them it's not a good fit, or we'll tell them that, hey, we will need to work with a third party like Five9 to integrate with you guys, because you have a very complex call center with CRM integration or ticketing system. But we'll help you navigate that, and we're not going to try to sell you the Cadillac before if you don't need it. We really do try to be genuine and provide you a pragmatic solution.
What I really appreciate is SkyTerra's incremental approach. It's very foundational and very simple. And ultimately, what we do as a company is ultimately what we do as a company is to maximize the value of your investment in your technology. And so I do see that to be a major differentiator for SkyTerra Technologies. So gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate you being here. Evan, thank you for being here as well. And I think we can call this a wrap.
Excellent. Thank you.
Appreciate everybody joining, and thank you, Deborah, for moderating.
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
Thanks.